You're on the air now.
Well, I thought we were going to do test. Oh, testing 1, 2 was just testing, huh?
Yeah. Well, that was just to make sure I got a signal coming through here.
Ah.
Now I do.
This strawberry reminds me of growing up out in the country.
Yeah.
When I was 10, about 10, my father got a different job up in Maryland, and so the family moved to this very rural area of Maryland. And I found there wasn't much to do out in the country. You know, it made my whole adolescence very sort of tortured. I thought that's what did it. Maybe everybody's adolescence is tortured, but we didn't have very much money. He lost the job shortly, and we had so little money, it was just crazy. But there were beautiful fields, and, you know, and we built the house, you know, pretty much ourselves. And so there's a lot of getting involved with the earth and, you know, like running in the woods and things like that, and learning about leaves and trees. And so one of the more curious things about Maryland is that they have copperhead snakes and black widow spiders and things like that you have to learn about. So since I found a black widow spider in the, you know, like under a rock out in the back patio, there was a black widow spider living there. And I put her in a bottle, and I put a nice label on her jar, Buttercup. And she lived in there for a long time, and I used to feed her flies and stuff, you know. I kept Buttercup for quite a long time, but then and I had this problem with crickets too, which I like crickets actually even better than black widow spiders. Although it's great to have a black widow spider as a pet. It was sort of like actually the relationship to a pet that was good for me. My brother had a dog, you know, but being the oldest and then slightly, I must say, screwed up, you know, and like remote and moody and nerdy and difficult and angry and things like that, which you wouldn't recognize in me today unless you start talking about the fucking government. Anyway, or, you know, culture at large. But anyway, so the black widow spider, that was really excellent. But the problem was, finally, the black widow spider simply got moldy. And it was like kind of a horrifying way to go. Just to get moldy. But it was moist and hot. And I had crickets too. I kept crickets for a while. I loved keeping a cricket, but it was very difficult to regulate the humidity in the food. You know, you put things in the jar for these beasts. These horrifying, gigantic beasts. And then the mold would get to the food faster than the beast. And then the mold would get to the beast too. So that's all I got to say on that topic, Richard.
Okay.
The bad experience with an insect is how the insect you can have a perfectly good time taking care of an insect, and then it gets moldy, and it's like pretty memorable horror. You know that thing in horror movies and Halloween and everything about cobwebs, and like having things, all like, little filaments and mushy that are all stringy and around you and get on you. That's like, now just imagine dying from getting moldy. It was that kind of mold too, yeah, really, yeah. What does this computer do? Does it flash up another thing? The first time I was home alone, I don't know. When I was living out there in the country like that, it was like, it didn't matter if other people were around. It was really alone. There was a lot of lonely time out there. A lot of lonely time out there. I don't think I'd rather get another one. Yeah, let's see. Oh, getting lost. Whew. Jeez. It's when you're little and you do this kind of thing, like running around in the woods, it is kind of terrifying, the idea that you might get lost. In fact, it's kind of fascinating because then you have ideas about how to regulate directions, and the adults talk about things like north, and so forth. And there's a sense of geometry, like how big things are and how things are laid out and mappings and so forth. Well, okay, and then you get to be a little older, and then you get to be like grown up or like even my age, and then you think like, like I've lived in Buffalo so long, I really wish I could get lost. And not so long ago, driving around someplace, I remember I was in the car with somebody and we really got lost. And I was so happy because, like there wasn't anything to worry about. It's just like having no idea which direction anything is. It was night, and there's no way to tell. There's no stars anymore, so it's just like the sun or nothing. So there was sort of no way to tell. I was in some city. I forget what city. Yeah, that's another part of the thing that's nice too. Yeah, beautiful experience, just being completely lost. And in that sort of situation, I think my favorite thing to do is just to sort of pick directions to go in some sort of arbitrary way, and just let's go this way, or let's go that way. Oh no, let's go this way, and then just. Like eventually, of course, I was in New Jersey not long ago on my way to New York, and I turned off to get some gas. And somewhere along the way, I took a wrong turn, and suddenly I realized, like, I don't know what road I'm on or which direction it's going or anything. And there was a little, like, flash of panic, like just like that. And then I thought, oh, I'm lost. Oh. Yeah, I just have to drive along and figure out where to go next. Richard has a diabolical plan in mind. He's trying to capture some kind of evanescent character of life-likeness on the camera here. We're not going to say, like, what's the first thing you remember, Tony? And Tony says, I was born. He says, you don't remember that? And then I say, oh, yes, I do. I remember I came out. And the first thing I did was I stood up and started talking. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah. Let's see. Instead, we're going to do this some kind of thing of sort of like marginalia. Oh. There's been a lot of talk. There's been a lot of talk about bullying recently, and I'm really happy that this has been happening a little more, because I experienced bullying when I was in school. I'm like a gigantic fucking man, you know. I'm like about 6'2" and 200 pounds of meat, so watch out for me. You know, but when I was a little boy, I was kind of shrimpy, and also I was a little young for the class I was in. It had happened because of Lon Taylor's mother. In Virginia, where I started school, Arlington, they had a weird system of quarters where you could start your schooling at any point in the year that a quarter began. And my birthday coming in March, oh, geez, I went into that sort of like silly like thing about signs now. Okay, so when my birthday came in March, I started school with grade 1A, and at the end of grade 1A, which came in June or whatever, or May or whatever, March, April, May, then I would go into grade 1B. And my little friend Lon, his mother also was, Lon was doing the same thing. And Lon's mother said, Lon isn't going to go into 1B. He should catch up with the other students. So he should go to summer school for 1B and skip ahead through 1C and just get into second grade when he comes back to school in the fall. And that's exactly what happened. And I was crestfallen. I loved the first 1A so much that I cried when I had to come home and couldn't go to school again, because I'd already learned to read and write. You know, really. It was like I was just overripe for... I can prove it. Here, look. Here's my diary from when I was in first grade. May 4th, 1946, see? This is my diary. Okay.
Let me zoom in on that.
Yeah. You want to zoom in on this. Yeah, and this is phonetics. See, I learned this phonetics, so I could write stuff. I could hardly figure out the letters, but I could write them, you know, and ask for some answers, you know. This is May 4th, 1946. Yes, I started in March, and I didn't know anything, and I learned to read and write right away. We saw the Indians, and there were tomahawks, and there were Eskimos, and there's yeah, at the Smithsonian Institution. Yeah, it went on too. Look, we did not have dessert at home. Dessert. Good guess. Very good guess. We had dessert at a restaurant. And then we went to the Naval Academy and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I kept this up through page 6. It was pretty tedious, but... So, I was so happy to get to go to summer school all summer long and then get into grade 2 in the fall with Miss Hazel, who taught us how to sing I Know That Our Redeemer Liveth, which was like kind of horrifying, and taught us about angels and stuff. And this was really like second grade was not very good, actually. But because of this, I was shrimpy, and so I got picked on. And when we moved to the country, oh my God, some of those country boys who had been like obviously like beaten into the ground by vicious hillbilly parents, like for generations. You know, they were. Cliff Eisenach was unmerciful. This guy was horrifying, and this guy Red told us in shop, okay, listen. The teacher is telling us about saw, circular saw safety. He said he watched, and tourniquets and everything. He watched his father die because he didn't know how to stop the bleeding when he cut his leg off, and that kind of thing. So there was a considerable amount of violence in that kind of situation, and it impresses you, and you see and then you wonder what the difference is between the people who've experienced violence like them and the ones who haven't, like me. Because see, like when I was really small, there weren't any, there was no TV during the time until I was like 11 or something. And I never went to the movies. My parents weren't into it. But once in a while we would go to the movies. I think we went and saw, we saw Dumbo. I don't have much memory of that. But then they took me to see Bambi. And Bambi, I'm sorry, Bambi is like horrifying. It's like very scary. If you don't know about these things and you find out about forest fires and how all the animals are going to burn up in the forest fire, and you're like, under 5 years old, whoa, and you never saw movies before and they seem to be like really real and stuff, it's very freaky. The most scary experience I ever had in movie viewing was because of there was a big guy. Mother invited all the kids in the neighborhood to go to the movies, and so I sort of like brainlessly went along somehow, even though I wasn't a part of that crowd. And they took us to see Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, which is a movie, it's a comedy with, if you ever never seen it, it has Abbott and Costello, and it also has Dracula and Batman and like vampires and Dracula, the Wolfman, and everything you can imagine in it. It's like, and I knew from nothing, had only seen one or two movies in my life, and all of a sudden I'm exposed to the environment of a parent. My parents were pretty, like loving to me, if not to each other. I guess they were to each other too. Yeah, probably. But anyway, so suddenly there's a parent, a grown up whose behavior is sort of like, I had bad dreams for like 6 months from this experience. I knew that like weird, terrifying experiences could really get under your skin and affect you. But it wasn't until I, like after the Vietnam War, read a great book called True Americanism, War Resisters and Green Berets, published by the Columbia Teachers College shortly after the Vietnam War. This guy went and interviewed war resistors, and that is, people who had opposed the war, and also interviewed Green Berets. In short, these were the two groups of young men who were the most leadership oriented of that generation, the most outgoing, the most committed, the most forward members of the generation, but on opposite sides. And to compare these people and then to interview them in depth, which he did at a base in Germany where he was posted as a psychologist, and then interviews in New York later with the war resistors. He discovered that the people who had witnessed violent death were much, much more common among the Green Berets, for example. That violence was a part of their background. It was a part of their lives. It was bred into their experiential condition. Witnessing a death. I don't think I witnessed a death myself very much. I remember I got on the subway down at Humboldt Station, and we waited. A subway comes into the station from downtown. It was like one stop or something. And it's very slow, and the doors open, and the people come shrieking off the subway. Everybody! Ah! And they're screaming, "He's got a gun! He's got a gun!" And so I figured, a gun? Look at these walls. I better go somewhere far away, because I knew that bullets bounce around. I'll tell you about that. And I thought, I don't want to be in here if there's going to be a bullet traveling around. So I went down to the end of the station and waited until everybody left. And then, there was nobody around, and I walked forward and looked through the open doors into the cars, and there was a gun under the seat of one of the, under the seat. And in the next doorway, there was a body, a guy lying on the floor, dead. Oh. I don't know, some stupid episode really stood out in my mind, though. The guy didn't get 3 blocks before they caught him. I mean, I don't know. People aren't thinking. I had a rifle. I still have a .22 rifle somewhere. I keep it disassembled and in opposite parts of the house because they say you shouldn't, have a gun in your house. Because you might, yeah, okay. So I keep it deliberately, so that it would take me a half hour to get it together, during which I would not have, no matter how angry or crazy I was, I would, have second thoughts. I think I have some ammo somewhere. But when I was living in my loft over on Prospect, I thought, I wonder what the bullets are like, And I got this idea. I thought, I'll shoot a bullet into the couch. See? And then I'll just dig it out and see what it's like. So I got my .22 out and I shot into the couch. Boom! And the bullet came out of the gun. It went through the couch. It made a big hole in my desk. Ricocheted off down the end of the loft, hit the wall, the brick wall down at the end of the loft, bounced all the way down to the other end of the loft, which is like 50 feet, hit that wall, and came back past me again and went somewhere, I don't even know where. And I just stood there and I thought, Tony, you should be dead. You stupid son of a gun. That was one of the dumber things you ever did in your life. This is why I got out of the way, when I was in the subway,
Ready for the next one?
Yeah. Worst gift ever received. I don't think I'm going to do this one. I'll just say that probably the worst gift that I ever got was sort of an inadvertent gift that I got when I turned 65 in March. Let's go on to the next one. I don't even want to think about it. Ooh. Falling in love at first sight. Jeez, you know, that's pretty easy to do. Do it all the time. Sort of. I don't know what it means exactly, but it's pretty, that's a pretty rich topic. Falling in love at first sight. Falling in love. He wants me to relate an anecdote about it. Should I relate an anecdote about falling in love at first sight? Falling in love at first sight. Yeah, well, I mean, of course, the thing about falling in love at first sight is when you use this as a topic, there's a presupposition that this is not turning out well, that it's something that will not turn out well. Yeah, well, the last time I was married, it was pretty much because I kind of went for somebody right away, and it built up to a great head of steam, and we actually got married, and then it turned out really, really bad. I don't want to even think about that. Oh God, no! This would, Richard. This wouldn't be a good topic to talk about.
Okay.
You know, some things are really good to talk about, but then sometimes you just want to. First experience with drugs or alcohol. I can do both of those. Ooh. Well, I was, my family was really very puritanical. I mean, to be honest, I didn't, drink coffee or alcohol or anything like that. And somehow, being the oldest kid made me exposed. I felt exposed all the time. I felt like I didn't want to compete with my father. I didn't want to, there was a kind of some weird anti-Oedipal thing going on. Or was it Oedipal? I don't know. It was like I didn't want to be in competition with my father. I didn't want to grow up. I didn't want to be grown up. I didn't want to be grown up. Did not want to exhibit maturity. I found that creepy. Over a very long, extended period, a bunch of decades. Yeah, really, but especially starting fairly early. So, the idea of drinking or drinking coffee or things like that, it didn't even appeal to me. I resisted. I didn't want to learn to drive. That was a good reason for going to New York. Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? Dating. My mother said, well, when you're 15, you'll probably like breasts. I thought, ooh, those big, loathsome things? I don't think so. They're creepola. Not thinking for a second about how I'd sucked on hers. Of course, she had told me that she didn't really like it. It irritated her, and so I had to bottle, so it's probably bottle, yeah. Too bad. She should have learned. But anyway, okay, so I guess that's the person I fell in love with at first sight was my mother. My mother was amazing. Okay. Where were we? So, I was a freshman in college, and they were having a party outside downstairs, and they were drinking punch and all getting rowdy, and my friend Lynn said, hey, let's go to... So we went down and started drinking this rum punch, and it tasted so awful, but I got drunk. Still remember it. I like the flavor of rum, actually, now, yeah. Weirdly. But the drugs, that's more interesting, see. I had made friends with a composer that I met in California when I was about 19, named Lamont Young. I liked Lamont a lot. He was older than I was, about 4 years. And he moved to New York, and so when I went to school, when I traveled to school from Maryland up to Boston, I would like play hooky off the Greyhound bus in New York, and I would go visit my pal Lamont Young over at his pad in New York. And yeah, it was like he was obviously into some different lifestyle, which I liked too. You know, like in California, they had been into, you know, like playing the guitar and all, but he was really into way out music, and he would always have like this really loud gagaku Japanese court music playing in his little apartment, and incense and everything. And then one time he's saying like, you know what this is? I said, no, what is that? And he says, this is hashish. Oh my God, I thought, hashish? That's it? Because I did a report in ninth grade on drugs. I knew all about drugs. You know, it's very interesting. I thought they were quite fascinating, but to actually see them, I thought they were like something that, you know, like maybe happened in, you know, like the city, or well, that was the city, yeah, okay, or you know, like maybe I didn't know what the heck, you know. So he thought maybe I should try it. I thought, well, I guess I oughta. Somehow I did. I tried smoking that hashish, and you know, I couldn't tell what was happening. Something weird was happening. And when I went to go back into the Greyhound bus, you know, I remember walking up 8th Avenue and thinking, something is happening. Whoa. But it was really hard to put my finger on it exactly what it was that was actually going on. Very interesting. And I've always felt actually that, you know, like marijuana or hash is one of the most interesting of all of those drugs, because if you if you wait, you know, if you don't like acclimate yourself to it when you're like 10 or something like that, but you wait until you're thoughtful and then you take it, it's like an unbelievably weird experience. It's like having a new form of perception. It's different from seeing. It's like some kind of new mental exposure or experience that takes place. Does not make you unconscious, does not make you just like happier or sadder or something like that, but takes your mental operation into some other slightly different realm, way of operating. And yet you retain so much of what was there before. Luckily. Whew. I thought it was very cool, actually. Yeah, so the next time I went to New York, I noticed that Lamont Young had that stuff again. Whoa. Not bad. Of course, I would read up on these things before I tried them, you know, more extensively. I would want to make sure that I knew that it was not damaging, you know, or like hopelessly debilitating to actually, you know, you don't want to, I mean, like sniffing glue, see, like, no, bad. But using most drugs once or twice, it's perfectly all right. That was a great thing. Lamont would, yeah. Then I, you know, like actually, I guess that there are whole social systems built around that, because a lot of the people who later became part of the Andy Warhol's factory scene were people who I met actually hovering around Lamont's place because they could go there and get high or buy drugs or stuff like that. You know, like Ondine and the Turtle and Billy Name and Billy Linick, and, you know, all these people that were pretty abstract a lot of the time. Now, some people weren't as vigilant as I was, I will say, in their lifestyle and so forth. But exercising a little care makes it fun when you're young to use some drugs once in a while. You can get in trouble pretty easily. I was lucky I didn't, I think. That's a dumb topic. Let's go on to the next topic, Richard. Oh my God. Biggest disappointment. I don't think I have any disappointments. I think you have to learn to to play the hand that life deals you, you know. And some people get all 2s and 3s, and you can play a good game with that. I mean, if you I guess if you get the right attitude. Oh boy, I hope so. Oh, you see it happening all the time. Disappointment.